In this video, we'll discuss the features on Anthony Bourdain's face that pointed to negative self-talk, an aptitude for food, and the emotional themes that would have been beneficial for him. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to another face reading. Today we've got Anthony Bourdain, and a number of viewers had asked that I read him, and he had some strong features, and there were a couple key themes that I wanted to talk about regarding Anthony Bourdain, because when we're doing these videos, I'm not doing a full face reading. I'm sort of taking the cream off the top, the big elements that I would be talking to the person about. And that's the thing to remember about face reading. It's not just to look at your personality and say, your features say this, and you carry this. That's wonderful, but it's more about regulating the light and the dark, because human beings are going to have to navigate their lives. And depending on the elements that are strong on their face, they're going to have to regulate the good and the bad that comes with that element, the light and the dark, the yin and the yang. So that being said, before I go on, if you're new to my channel, please go up here and watch the 5-minute crash course face reading video. That will give you terms and terminology and a general orientation to how face reading works. Very important. And if you're finding value in my content, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification, and share this video with anyone who you think will find it interesting. So when I was looking at his face, two primary things I wanted to discuss. Actually, technically three. Yeah, three. So the first one was the framing of his face, rectangular in nature. So when we see that framing, sort of a long face, what I call a horse face, that rectangular shape, each of the 5 elements have shapes that associate with them. The wood element relates to the rectangle. Now this is relevant because the wood element regulates on the negative side. The emotions that you have to be mindful of are anger, irritability, and frustration. Now, the positive side of the wood element is kindness, compassion, and empathy. So right out of the gates, if I was working with Bourdain in the past, if he had been a client of mine, I would have said, hey, those elemental themes and those emotional themes, you've got to pay attention to. You've really got to work on those. And if you're experiencing anger, frustration, and irritability about your life path or whatever, you're going to have to lean into these positive emotions and really make those strong so that that darkness doesn't consume you. It's true for every person. Now, he took his own life in 2018. It's very sad, very tragic. People were really upset by this, obviously. He was well-loved. People really liked Anthony Bourdain. He had a very strong face, and he had something called direct wood luck. So wood luck relates to intensity. It's sort of like the tough love type of luck that we have in life. If you use that energy, it behooves you. And Anthony Bourdain was very direct. He sort of had that quality about him, so he was fulfilling that. And if he'd continued to lean into that, that would have been a good thing. So the second component that I want to talk about is the countenance of his Shen, how the spirit animates through the face. Years back, when I was becoming oriented to him, I always thought there was sort of a darkness and sadness to his face. And when I say dark, I don't mean evil, but it looked like there was sort of this conflicted sadness in him. He never looked really fully happy. There was something kind of dark in there. So when he took his own life, I wasn't totally surprised given his Shen, but I wouldn't have guessed that this would have happened either. So I wasn't predictive in thinking that would happen to him. And you can't look at anyone's face and say, these features mean that you could go down that road and take your own life. That's not how face reading works. But in looking at his face, some of these things link up. So the other component that I wanted to talk about were his ears. Big ears, that's a water element feature. And so again, when we see a big feature that stands out, we've got to look at the elemental themes and the emotional themes that go with that. So the kidneys, the water element, regulate on the negative side, fear, panic, and dread. Now, on the positive side, fascination, awe, and wonderment. So again, if I had been working with Anthony Bourdain, I would say you've really got to look at these key elemental themes and these emotional rhythms to keep yourself well tuned. Now, when I was reading about him, there was a quote, and I'm not going to directly quote it, but he was writing a letter to his ex-wife, and one of the things he said was, "I hate my fans, I hate being famous, and I hate my work." Now, that's a hard thing to hear because he was so well liked and he was so successful. But what that points to is a conflict in the spirit, the orientation to the world, and how your worldview sits within you. So, when someone says, I hate my fans, people who admire you, what that points to is not that he fundamentally hated people that liked him. What it means is conflict with the self. If you don't like who you are, you don't like what you're doing, the people that admire you, the way that probably translated in his head was, how can you like me when I don't even like me? And so again, it's more about self-commentary. It's really sad to think about given how prolific he was and how much impact he had in the world. So these are some of the things that I would be talking to Anthony Bourdain about and stressing to him in terms of lifestyle guidance. Now on his ears, a couple more things on that. His left ear deviated out a bit more. He had this flare, this going out. So when the tips of the ears kind of go out, what that's code for in face reading is the person hears what they want to hear. Now his left side definitely had a little bit more of this. So that means his interpersonal nature was a bit more geared to hearing what he wanted to hear. So again, all of this praise in the external world, and yet what he heard was something different internally, and that's pretty sad. The other point about his ears is that he had pretty fleshy earlobes. The earlobes relate to good luck or good fortune later in life. And so to think that he went early and took his life early, he was geared up to have good old age luck. And that's sad when I think about this in a larger context. He also left behind an 11-year-old daughter at the time. So it's just a really sad story to think about. But I also wanted to touch on the fleshiness of his face because that relates to the earth element. When we see plumpness in the features, in the cheeks, in the nose, we see that fleshiness. That relates to the earth element, and the earth element has very strong ties to food. It has ties to diet. It has ties to being of house and home, connecting with people, dinner parties. Again, some congruency in terms of what Anthony Bourdain did with his life and what his face actually carried. So these were the big key features on Anthony Bourdain that I saw and things that I would be thinking about. And the thing I want to stress about face reading is that face reading is not just about me or the face reader telling you about your personality structure and like what you carry. It's also about garnering and protecting against those dark forces. That's just the way it goes. And it's something we have to realize that if you carry an element, there's a light side and a dark side to it. And if you want to live a long, healthy, happy life, you've got to regulate both of these. The last little bit I'll say, for people that struggle with this kind of thing, and I don't know what his relationship was to this, but the administration of psychedelics, things like psilocybin mushrooms, things like ayahuasca, things that can basically change your worldview from the inside. When people struggle and they have Shen, conflict, right? Disturbance in the spirit, this is a viable way to go about that and to process those things in your life. So that's pretty much everything I've got for Anthony Bourdain. If you've got questions, comments, whatever, please put them down below. Thanks for your time.